our great ally being aligned with the People's Republic of China when it comes to trade with the U.S.
The stuff going on here today. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we've got Trump undermining Mark Carney's lack of negotiating here, creating a backdoor for Canadian companies to reduce or remove tariff-free trade for America. We've got a woke reporter on CTV trying a gotcha question on Pierre, which blows up in her face. We've got a bunch of stuff here. Let's jump into this. Starting this episode off, we got Shreya Teese posting the latest Abacus data poll showing 45% for the Liberals, +1, and 36%, -2 for the Conservatives. So really not much changing here. You'll also notice too the NDP have not moved at all. Same with the Bloc. We got Holly Doan, Blacklock's reporter, posting this saying, well, somebody retweeted this story from 2024 and as she says seems relevant. Canada Pension Plan put $604 million into Chinese electric vehicle sector. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland blamed Chinese industry for killing jobs, telling Canadian workers, we are going to protect you. The irony of this, this is very relevant today. Also from Holly Doan here, Blacklocks, we've got no comment from Mark Carney over claims he personally helped balance the 1998 federal budget, though he was a student at Oxford at the time. Now on the flip side here, we've got hundreds of Pew Pew owners here in Cambridge, Ontario. They call on Mark Carney's Liberal to stop the Pew Pew confiscation and the Waterloo Police to commit to not participate in it. Okay, we got to turn off that music, but yeah, people protesting. Starting to get some protesting. Nice weather. With that, we've got a video here, no audio on it, but this is the Governor General of Canada, Mary Simon. Look how much security she gets for going to get barbecue chicken. They block down the street. Why? Nobody cares about Mary Simon. So they escort her in to get some barbecue chicken. Like, this is where our taxpayer dollars are going. Can they just not order this for her if this is such a big deal? I mean, this is ridiculous. Look at this. They have an RCMP in the middle of the street. Why? Just park on the side of the road and go get some barbecue chicken. They can escort her in and out. This is beyond ridiculous. And I say that because there's Liberal ministers that many Canadians do not like 10 times more than her, and they don't get the same treatment. So make it make sense. Now, jumping over to America, we've got, well, a couple of stories. We've got Jasmine posting this clip. There was some sort of noise at the White House Correspondent Association dinner, and then immediately Secret Service goes to defend J.D. Vance and Donald Trump. You got to give it to these guys. Like, there's a lot of courage just to stand there in front of the president as a human shield. And we now have confirmation of exactly what happened here. Another crazed guy trying to take out Donald Trump.
U.S. President Donald Trump was evacuated from the White House Correspondents Association dinner tonight after a incident. Authorities say a man armed with guns and knives stormed the lobby and rushed toward the ballroom before Secret Service agents swarmed him and took him into custody. Trump responded to the security incident at a presser.
This was an event dedicated to freedom of speech that was supposed to bring together members of both parties with members of the press. And in a certain way it did, because the fact that they just unified, I saw a room that was just totally unified. It was in one way very beautiful.
The Secret Service and authorities flooded the banquet hall as guests ducked under tables by the hundreds. The president and other top leaders were removed. One Secret Service member was injured. The event is said to be rescheduled.
The man has been captured. They're going to his apartment. I guess he lives in California.
Here's another angle from the back where they pull out J.D. Vance. Then you can see Trump is pulled up behind the curtain here. Okay, we got to get rid of that music. Some eerie music they put in there, but they pulled J.D. Vance out, and then you can see some tactical guys come in and grab Trump. So I don't know if they had him go down to the ground because there's more noises or he tripped or whatever, but so this just happened. Now, also out of America, we have this. So I'll just show you the date first. April 23rd, 2026. You can see eligible steel and aluminum producers may submit documentations as of this date. We're talking just 3 days ago. Trump has brought in a back door to stick it to Carney for not negotiating with the Americans. We see the Mexicans are working on getting a renewed steel, aluminum, autos, all those kind of tariff deals, and the CUSMA renegotiations. But Carney and his team are not negotiating. They're not doing what's in our best interest. So Trump has created a back door backdoor. We see procedures for submissions by certain steel and aluminum producers committed to new U.S. steel and aluminum production to obtain tariff adjustments under the Proclamation 10984. So what exactly is this? Well, you can see it says presidential proclamation, etc., adjusting imports of medium and heavy duty vehicles, medium heavy duty vehicle parts, buses into United States. The president imposed additional tariffs on imports of specified medium and heavy duty MHDVs, medium heavy duty parts, buses. Says the proclamation also authorized Secretary of Commerce to reduce tariffs owned under proclamation this number. Then it mentions imports of aluminum into the United States, imports of steel into the United States for certain steel and aluminum producers operating production facilities in Canada or Mexico based on newly committed U.S. production capacity. The notice establishes procedures for submission and review of documentation substantiating new U.S. production capacity commitments and eligibility for adjusted tariffs by the Department of Commerce. Basically, they're saying we will give you reduced tariffs. I don't know if it goes to zero, but reduced tariffs, maybe zero tariffs, if Canadian or Mexican steel, aluminum, auto or auto part companies increase their production in America or move their production to America. Now, obviously, if they just moved the entire thing to America, they would be in America, so they wouldn't have any tariffs. So this is mostly focused on them creating new production, new investments in America. If we scroll down here, it says eligibility, only applicants that produce steel and aluminum in Canada or Mexico that supply directly or indirectly through corporation into parts into U.S. producers of automobiles, MHDVs, which is medium heavy duty vehicles, are eligible for tariff adjustment based on new production commitments. Only new production commitments from qualified companies that will expand U.S. primary steel and primary aluminum production capacity for key products, and then it mentions automobiles, etc., and then it talks about imports of steel and aluminum that qualify for preferential tariff treatment under USMCA that were melted and poured or smelted and cast in Mexico or Canada are eligible for tariff adjustment. So Trump has created a backdoor where these companies can invest in America and they'll give them reduced tariffs because Mark Carney is not negotiating a deal with the Americans. Like, this is humiliating. This is a smart move for America. They can get more production. They're using these tariffs against Canadian companies now. This is awful for Canada because it's just going to drive more of our money out of our companies that should be investing here down to America. Now, this is great for Mark Carney because he's 91% invested in America. It's awful for Canadians. We got this video here, Ryan Garrettson clipped, showing how the U.S. government is getting pissed off with us. They're talking about fruits and vegetables in this one. There's packaging limitations. Ambassador Greer says they may have to retaliate against Canada in some form. Carney is ruining our relationship with America, and he's destroying our country.
The top trade issue in my district in northern New York 24, is the relationship between the U.S. and Canada. Canada has long discriminated against certain industries in my district, and that is what I want to focus on today. Let's start with dairy. For years, Canada has rigged their system to prevent U.S. dairy producers from fair access to Canada's markets. This year's National Trade Estimate report, as every year's report details, Canada's market manipulation and unfair treatment of U.S. producers is still evident. The U.S. has fought for years to gain access to the Canadian dairy market, and yet Canada continues to violate USMCA and the spirit of its dairy commitments. Have you and your team raised these issues with our Canadian counterparts thus far, and have they been constructive in helping all of us resolve this issue with our friend to the north?
We have raised it repeatedly and frequently over the past year. Our Canadian counterparts have indicated as a general matter they're happy to talk to us about adjustments to USMCA and different things like that, but they have made no commitments on this front at this time.
Well, that's disappointing. So let's shift to wine, another issue detailed. Every Canadian province, with the exception of Alberta and Saskatchewan, has ceased distribution. Every Canadian province, with the exception of Alberta and Saskatchewan, has ceased distribution of U.S. wine and liquor products, including Ontario to the north. This is distorting the market, causing immense harm to our wine producers in the district. And have you and your team raised this issue as well with our Canadian counterparts? And have they been trying to help us? Have they been constructive in this issue, much like with the dairy issue?
Well, it's at the provincial level, right? So we hear from the federal government of Canada, well, it's the provinces. And then we do have two provinces who don't have this. That being said, I think we're kind of at the end of our rope in just asking for them to do this. Think about it this way. There are two countries that have retaliated economically against the United States in the past year, the People's Republic of China and Canada. So that's kind of the company that they're running in. So my sense is there may have to be an enforcement action to deal with this issue on wine and spirits in Canada.
This is destroying our country. I mean, this has been going on a long time now. For years, the Liberal government has violated the CUSMA agreement. This really blew up last year. Trudeau put on retaliatory tariffs. I saw this firsthand because I was trying to buy a backpack that came from America. America's basically the world leader in ultralight backpacks. Getting that imported here, the tariff was so ridiculous, they increased the price by 30 or 40%, something ridiculous, which is basically a tax I'd be paying to the Liberal government. The sporting goods, the fruits and vegetables, there's numerous categories where the Liberals have violated the CUSMA agreement. I mentioned this a few days ago. Brian Lilly came out with that article and said that there is no entry fee payment. That was propaganda that came from CBC. Now we've got a serious problem because the Americans are pissed off about this. Now Donald Trump is creating back doors for our companies to move more of their money and production expansion into America to get relief for themselves because Carney's not doing the job.
One last issue I'd like to discuss with is the Canadian prohibition on bulk imports of fresh fruit and produce. My district is the 19th largest fruit producing district in the nation and the 21st largest vegetable producing district in the nation. Once again, as detailed in the NTE, Canada severely restricts imports of bulk fresh fruits and vegetables. Have you and your team raised this issue with our Canadian counterparts, and where are they with this issue as well?
We thought this would be an easy one for them to fix. They've refused to fix it. It's in the national trade estimate. It has been for a long time. It's one of those crazy things when you hear that exists. People say, oh, well, Canada, they're our best friends. But then they do things like this where you can't ship fruit if it's in a package above a certain size. It doesn't even make economic sense. So we've raised it with them. We'll continue to do it.
Yeah, it's disappointing.
That's ridiculous. What? So Canada would rather have more packaging, if I'm reading into this right? They want fruits and vegetables into smaller amounts of packaged product, which produces more waste, more plastic. Doesn't that go against the Liberals' agenda?
They talk about us. They want to talk about the tariffs. However, they don't appear willing to actually address this issue as you've described. And we really need to really forge this relationship with our Canadian counterparts. How do we get them to come to the table and bring back this relationship that is so important for our farmers, our business owners, everyone, and really value their friendship, but also want to see them come to the table. I hate to see our great ally being aligned with the People's Republic of China when it comes to trade with the U.S.
I've been pretty clear with the Canadians on a variety of things. Anyone can read the national trade estimate to have a sense of the kind of things I've asked them to work on.
To sum this up, we're screwed with the Liberals. Carney's about to find out he's in bed with China and the United States is not going to let that slide. If they have to intervene, they will. I think we're getting pretty close. I think this comment is right on the money here. Moving ahead, we've got the food professor commenting on this interview here. So this woke CTV reporter, I'm going to show you the clip, tries this gotcha question on Pierre, and he's like, whoa, what are you saying here? Pierre just fact checks her and says, what you're saying doesn't make sense. Food professor commenting on this, saying during an interview, CTV News yesterday, anchor Renee Rogers asked Pierre Poilievre why he supports cutting fuel taxes if it would push inflation higher. Not only is that claim questionable, in fact, one could argue the opposite, reducing taxes would ease inflationary pressure. And that's exactly what Pierre said on this segment. Now, before I show you that question, we have to see the one before it here where she basically blubbers all over the Carney government and says how great they're doing. Pierre first has to dismantle all of this nonsense. Then she tries with the next question.
We are expecting the economic update this week. Now, it is expected to post a lower deficit than what was predicted in the November budget. On top of that, the inflow of foreign direct investment over the last year is the most since 2007. And the IMF is forecasting the Canadian economy this year will be the second fastest growing in the G7. I must ask you, with all respect, why do you keep attacking Mark Carney this week and his economic credentials?
Well, because they're so bad. He's been wrong about every single economic issue of the last 10 years. He was wrong to support carbon taxes, wrong to oppose our oil and gas, which he said half of which should stay in the ground. He was wrong to oppose the Enbridge pipeline to the Pacific. He was wrong to propose money printing, which caused inflation. And in the present, I just have to correct the record on some things. It's fine for the IMF to make projections, but here's the reality. We have the only shrinking economy in the G7 after a year of Mark Carney. We have the worst food price inflation in the G7 after a year of Mark Carney. We have the worst household debt in the G7 after a year of Mark Carney, and we have the worst housing costs in the G7 after a year of Mark Carney. Finally, you say the deficit is lower. With respect, the deficit is twice the size of the one that Justin Trudeau left behind. Trudeau, who was spending outrageously, had a $40 billion deficit. Carney has raised that to well over $70 billion, almost double, all the result of increased spending. No one thought it was going to be possible to be more irresponsible than Trudeau, but we found that Mark Carney has succeeded at doing that. And so you've asked me why I'm criticizing Mr. Carney. It's nothing personal. It's just that his results are so terrible, and the Canadian people are paying the price through higher inflation and higher taxes. With Carney, it's more taxes, more debt, more costs, more of the same. He's just another Liberal.
I think that's such a great response. And like initially he wasn't going after his terrible record as much. It's clear that they've pivoted and like just going full bore attacking Carney's awful record, just like Justin Trudeau. It worked before. It should work again. Once people start looking up how bad Carney is, this should work. And what a deplorable string of statements here while she's asking that question. Just so unbelievably paid off.
What you've proposed to address inflation is less government spending over the past few years. But at the same time, you are proposing cutting these gas taxes, which will increase demand and therefore inflation. Why should Canadians trust your economic credentials?
Sorry, I don't understand that you're framing there. You say that lowering a tax on gas will increase inflation?
Increased demand for the gas, which, again, could increase inflation.
Okay, that's an interesting one. I've never heard anyone saying lowering taxes on gas could possibly increase inflation. Exactly the opposite has happened. Every time you reduce gas taxes, go across the provinces that have done this, in Alberta, in Manitoba, and in Ontario, when they reduced gas taxes, inflation in those provinces went down next compared to their neighboring provinces. But, I guess, the Liberal mindset is that the way that you address inflation is through higher taxes. We've seen how that's worked. Canadians can't afford to eat after a year of the Carney Liberals and after a decade of this Liberal government. They can't afford homes after a decade of this Liberal government. So we see that more spending and more taxing by the Liberals makes life impossible for hardworking Canadians. They deserve an affordable and a prosperous country, and that's what Conservatives would deliver.
All right.
Yeah, so that blew up right in her face. She gets her little talking points. She doesn't know what she's saying. Like, let's get real. She's just reading it off this sheet. She's just a mouthpiece for the government.